Oh my gosh, the first time in 37 years of living in Florida, I've run across this one. This is the hickory horn devil. Pretty. We have lost 35% of all forests in the last 300 years. 680 vertebrate species have gone extinct directly from human interactions. I can tell you what I've done. Forests make up around 30% of land, and yet 80% of terrestrial species exist in a forest. Plants, animals, insects, and fungi all thrive in this type of environment. There's really no saying just how many species exist in a forest like this. Forests are some of the most beneficial habitat we have here on Earth. And for some reason, when we think of forests, we think of a sprawling canopy. We don't consider all the unique connections that are going on underneath our feet. You can hear so many different insects, and our connection to the forest is so much deeper than we realize at first glance. Like in this hole, or under this bark, or down in the soil. Earthworms and fungi and microbacteria and viruses and everything that we don't get to see with our naked eyes. Fungi are also primarily found in the forest, and they live on dead trees, dead plants and dead animals, and really thrive in areas where no animals can. The fungi have adapted to coexist with animals and plants. And simultaneously, plants and insects have adapted to coexist as well. Literally, mycorrhizae feed the plant. They're nitrogen-fixing bacteria and fungi. And they feed the plant and help it grow and nourish insects. And insects, surprisingly, can be some of the most beneficial organisms on Earth for spreading the spores of fungi far and wide. Somewhere on this web, humans fall into it. If we try to disconnect ourselves from the web, we'll end up taking parts of the web with us. If we pull the wrong jingle block, the whole tower falls. And that could have rippling effects throughout entire ecosystems. We literally can't make everything we need to survive synthetically. We can produce glass, we can't produce wood, but we can't pollinate the flowers like a bee can. We can't produce meat or fruit. What can we really create without nature? How are we going to separate ourselves from nature to do stuff like this? They sell work, and they don't even factor in the cost to clean up the mess. If you can accept this basic information as truth, it'll help everything go so much smoother. Then we can move on from there. We have lost 35% of all forests in the last 300 years. And unfortunately, many of the forests that remain aren't natural. They're monocultures. They're planted by us, for us. A healthy forest should have lots of biodiversity. Canopy trees, understory trees, shrub layer, ground layer, and the mycorrhizae and fungi and bacteria that exist in the soil to help build that beautiful forest. At least 680 vertebrate species have gone extinct directly from human interactions. This includes species like the Tasmanian tiger, the dodo bird, just to name a few. 95% of animal species are invertebrates. That means only 5% are vertebrate animals. We've discovered 1.25 million invertebrate species, and yet scientists estimate there's at least 30 million more to be discovered. Earth has 7 continents. Antarctica is covered in ice. What can we do to preserve biodiversity, restore habitats, protect the Earth, and the unique relationships that we share with all of the organisms here on Earth? I can tell you what I've done. While this system doesn't apply for everyone, I hope that it can give you good ideas. When I bought this property, there wasn't a whole lot to work with. Through me adding plants and other trees and allowing seedlings to germinate and sprout, I was able to increase the biodiversity here on this piece. I don't know exactly how many different species of plants I've added, but I know many of these species of plants aren't here just for the beauty of the plants. They're here because they're a food source for other animals and insects. One method that people may say is lazy is the leave it lay method. If it's not in your way or disturbing you, then leave it lay. Because so many organisms find home right here in fallen timber and debris piles. You can get anything from rabbits to insects to snakes to amphibians, all because you left it lay. So I highly recommend, when possible, leave it lay. In areas where you see nothing but grass, I always look at it like this. Why did the PlayStation 3 overtake the Atari? It went three-dimensional, and grass is a two-dimensional surface, doesn't add much value in ecological nor visual. If you have an opportunity to create a three-dimensional plane in your yard, you're missing out on a lot if you haven't done it. So that's why when I bought this property, there was just a few small starter trees, these oaks here, and they were much smaller. They were this big when I moved in. I added all of these other plants. And that's what I mean by going three-dimensional. I literally just put a few seeds in a garden and they took over. These are Galaria flowers, Indian blanket. And these have attracted so many different insects and other insects that prey on insects because I let it lay and let it grow and did not mow. Without a doubt, flowers have helped attract a ton of biodiversity. But you know what's attracted even more biodiversity than any one particular flower species? That would be water. You see, water is the life bringer. It's what allowed pretty much all life on Earth and a lot of diversity. You know what else is really important to attracting a lot of diversity on your property? The one thing that I think has made the largest difference in attracting a lot of diversity on my property is time. I gave the seeds time to grow. This didn't happen overnight. I couldn't have planted all these plants in 1 year. This is 5 years in the making. I've left islands unmowed and unmaintained. There's a red-shouldered hawk over there. Just flew right in front of me. That red-shouldered hawk wouldn't have come here if there wasn't a good foundation for the smaller birds, squirrels, insects that fed on the different variety of plants that attracted the mockingbird that fights that red-tailed hawk right here in my yard. Time was the #1 thing that helped attract the most diversity in my yard. Currently, right now, I have 2 water sources and this tarp and that hole that should become a 3rd water source soon. I hope one day I can call this a forest because I've already nicknamed it the Forest of the Monarch instead of my yard. In good time, I think this place will become the biological hotspot that preserves and maintains so many different organisms that can be recognized by everyone as a forest.